The following program is produced by Project Bait and does not reflect the views of this station.
This is Mark Wells with part 2 of the Wells Report on Afro-Latinos for My People. With the 2010 census quickly approaching, activists and organizations like the NAACP and the National Urban League are asking for the African American community to participate in the process. The collection of census data directly impacts how more than $400 billion in federal funding is distributed to state and local governments. This funding in turn impacts the quality of life, health care, education, and social service programs of specific communities. Besides the African American community, 2010 is also shaping up to be an important census year for another group of African descendants that have been traditionally underserved in their respective countries: Afro-Latinos. Although some reports say that Afro-Latinos represent about 150 million of the 450 million inhabitants of Latin America, Afro-Latinos, like African Americans, are usually situated on the bottom of their respective societies. One of the reasons that Afro-Latino communities are underserved is because Latin American governments haven't seen the necessity of addressing issues that specifically affect Afro-Latino communities, or even provide accurate data of the size of their African descendant populations. Spearheaded by several Afro-Latino organizations, Latinos of African descent are being encouraged to identify themselves as African descendants in 2010 census, rather than using ambitious racial terms such as moreno, mulatto, or trigueño. Whether we know it or not, African Americans and Afro-Latinos have been connected for centuries. As the United States only received 4% of all African slaves sent to the Americas, many of our ancestors were shipped to the United States from Latin America and the Caribbean, where 96% of all African slaves were sent. Amid attitudes of some that Afro-Latinos and Caribbeans are somehow not black like African Americans, let us understand that by rejecting our connection with Afro-Latinos and Caribbeans, we will also reject many prominent figures in our own history. How many of us knew that the parents of the great W.E.B. Du Bois were Haitian, as was Jean-Baptiste Point du Sable, the man who founded the city of Chicago? Other people that you may not realize are Haitians or children of Haitians are actresses Garcelle Beauvais and Layla Rashawn. Important Jamaicans or Jamaican descendants include black nationalist Marcus Garvey and actor, singer, activist Harry Belafonte. From the island of Puerto Rico come boxing champs Wilfred Benitez and Felix Trinidad, Hall of Fame baseball player Roberto Clemente, and even actor Antonio Fargas, who is of Puerto Rican and Trinidadian ancestry. Many of our well-known political figures also trace their roots to the Caribbean. Among them are Attorney General Eric Holder, whose parents were from Barbados, while former Secretary of State Colin Powell's parents were Jamaican. R&B crooner Maxwell's style is rooted in the classic 1970s soul sound of people like Marvin Gaye. But how many of us knew that Maxwell's parents were from Puerto Rico and Haiti? My point here is that there are so many Afro-Latinos and Caribbeans woven into the fabric of African American history and DNA, it is virtually impossible to separate our experiences. There are far too many African American entertainers and public figures that have roots in Latin America and the Caribbean that I have time to name in this segment. But migration of African descendants has been going on since we first arrived in the Americas, and not just to the United States. As I covered in a previous segment for My People, Haitians continue to migrate across the border into the Dominican Republic, while Dominicans in turn migrate to the neighboring island of Puerto Rico. Afro-Colombians have sought refuge in neighboring country Ecuador to escape the decades-long civil war in Colombia. Afro-Brazilians have settled in neighboring countries like Argentina and Uruguay and spread their cultural practices like the martial art capoeira and the candomblé religion wherever they go. Jamaican immigration to Panama led to the spread of reggae with Spanish lyrics, a precursor to the modern reggaeton movement that swept through Latin America in the last decade. And let us not forget the migration of thousands of African American slaves who escaped slavery by migrating to not only Canada, but also Mexico. In Central America, we find the nation of Costa Rica, a country where one doesn't expect to find African descendants. But the small black population in Costa Rica is a result of 1880s Jamaican immigrants who arrived to construct the railroad systems on the Caribbean coast. A descendant of those Jamaican immigrants to Costa Rica is Epsie Campbell, a community organizer and economist who is seeking to become the first black woman to become president of a Latin American country. Campbell is also a force behind the Center for Women of African Descent and the Black Parliament of the Americas. She also organized the second meeting of Afro-Caribbean and Afro-Latin American women in San Jose, Costa Rica. And as if that weren't enough, Campbell is also a key activist in the drive for African descendants throughout Latin America to identify themselves as black on 2010 census forms in Latin American countries. Campbell is one of a team of 13 black professors and specialists from Brazil, Colombia, Venezuela, Puerto Rico, Ecuador, Peru, and the Dominican Republic, whose goal is to bring visibility to Afro-Latinos in their respective countries. Through the implementation of public policies aimed at opening doors that have historically excluded them from mainstream society, African descendants throughout Latin America are demanding their place in countries where their ancestors toiled as slaves. In closing, I will remind you that every country from the most northern part of Canada to the most southern part of Argentina is considered the Americas, and African slaves were shipped to the vast majority of these countries. Thus, in liberal terms, there are about 200 million people who could call themselves African Americans dispersed from Canada to Argentina. So the next time you see or meet a person who looks as if their ancestors were from the motherland but they speak Spanish, French, Dutch, Portuguese, or English with an accent, make an effort to learn a little bit about them and their history. It may remind you a little of your own. This is Mark Wells, and this has been part 2 of the Wells Report on Afro-Latinos for My People.
Read the latest edition of Urban Journeys, We Ride the Bus, on projectbait.blackgold.net. That's Urban Journeys on projectbait.blackgold.net.
I'm Geraldine Watkins, the director of the Considine Little Rock Family Life Center, located at 8904 Woodward Avenue at the corner of Holbrook in Detroit. We offer swimming, basketball, as well as a full fitness center. We also have a beautiful hall available for rental of all occasions. For more information regarding programming and services, please contact us at 313-871-4673. Again, 313-871-4673.
Hey Detroit, consider yourself served.
Find out how you can help. Visit us at uso.org.
Little Rock Baptist Church is the going church for the coming Christ. You want to find out more about services which are held every Sunday at 11 a.m.? Call 313-872-2900.
You know, I run into you quite a bit, and you talk about what you like on For My People. Rather than just telling me or just saying you like the program, why don't you send us something on an email at projectbait@att.net. That's projectbait@att.net. We want to know what you think, whether you like it, whether you didn't like a segment, you want to see something else. Definitely be in contact with us. projectbait@att.net. Funding for closed captioning is provided by the Rice Bowl Fresh Asian Cooking, located in the Millender Center in downtown Detroit, on West Grand Boulevard in the New Center area, and in the College Park Shopping Center, located on Southfield Road at Outer Drive. For more information, contact us at 313-963-3200.